My name is Andrew Browning, President of Western States and Tribal Nations. I'm gonna do a bit of a slide overview of our organization, its origins here at the Uintah Basin Energy Conference, and then we'll talk. We'll have a panel discussion with our board of directors who represent Western state and sovereign tribal nations within our organization. First, a little bit about Western states and tribal nations. Like I said, we had our genesis here at a panel discussion about 6 years ago. Then the hot topic was Jordan Cove. We had the executive director of the Colorado Energy Office, representatives from Pembina, and then the Utah Governor's Office of Energy Development. Was really the discussion was what can the Rocky states do, underscoring that the Rockies natural gas was the best situated gas to supply the feedstock to Jordan Cove and take, it's a 2 BCF a day project. What could we do to help realize its success? Ultimately, Jordan Cove didn't happen. We'll actually get into that in our discussion a little bit. But our organization was created from that panel discussion at this conference. And you see at the top, we have some familiar faces in some of our initial meetings. Jordan Clark, Dr. Laura Nelson, Devin Pehrson, then Duchesne County Commissioner Greg Todd, now the Executive Director of the OED. We're all part of the genesis of our organization, really under the rubric that our focus was rural economic development, tribal sovereignty, and lowering emissions globally by exporting gas from the Rockies for power generation to displace dirtier fuels in the Asian markets. And we've grown over the past 5 years. Our MOU membership now includes the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, the state of Baja California, Mexico, the state of New Mexico, the state of Utah, the state of Wyoming, the Ute Indian Tribe, a founding member, Jicarilla Apache Nation, western Colorado counties of Garfield, Mesa, Moffett, and Rio Blanco. We may have some representatives here from those counties. And then the province of Alberta, they are on our board. We are in a parliamentary system, you have these snap elections and rotating governments. We've been dealing with that a little bit, and we're hoping that they can join us as a full board member shortly. We are currently courting the state of Arizona. We'll get to that in a little bit. You'll see all pipelines go through Arizona at this point, and then the Navajo Nation, obviously an important political actor in the region. Here's some of the topics that we'll be talking about. Arizona, how our goal is to get them in our coalition. They have a centrist, I would say, governor, even though she is a Democrat, but she needs joining a organization that promotes fossil fuel is going to be challenging for her. So how do we make it a palatable choice for her to join our organization, which is really focused on LNG exports? California, we'll get to this in a little bit. High natural gas prices in some spots last December through January. Some parts of California were hitting $45-50 a million BTU. Some people in this room made a lot of money off that. The people of California realized $4.5 billion exit of their own personal wealth out of the state to pay for energy, which is really enough to pay for new infrastructure into the state. We'll talk a lot about Japan and the Asian markets and the dynamics of the Russian-Ukraine war, how those have kind of flipped markets on their head, and really what they're looking for in the future to be a market maker on decarbonized ammonia, which can be made from natural gas, which is made from natural gas, and the prospective markets there. And we'll talk a little bit about the Biden administration's focus on hydrogen and some of the incentives that are coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act and their focus on carbon capture and sequestration. Here's just, I think it's a great slide to be a part of our discussion. I like visuals. This is California, the western states, half of Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, December 22nd through December 2022 through January 2023. This pricing, as the title says, illustrates the need for new infrastructure in California, a major market for the western basins. They had a couple of force majeure events. Infrastructure there is aging, older than World War II, and it's like driving an old car, right? It's gonna keep on breaking down. You can keep it going, but what are some good ideas to connect with the California market, realizing their political agenda is quite a bit different, but how can we work with them to address those issues? I can tell you we've been on conference calls with folks in California and discussing their energy bills, and it's a significant impact, especially on the population with greater needs. The poorer populations are spending an incredible amount of their money on energy. And then and this to me is a great visual. We'll talk a little bit about pipeline developments. There's Energía Costa Azul. We'll talk about that. One spot that is not represented on this map, and I need to get that fixed, but it's Mexico Pacifico is a new project on the west coast of Sonora, Mexico, so on the other side of Panama Canal, directly south of New Mexico. It is the real deal. They're going FID. It is 12 million tons per year. Ostensibly, they are working with Permian producers, but they want to hedge their bets, and we're convincing them of that, of the need for Rockies gas as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our panel discussion. And then these are some of the quotes that we have realized. Some of the discussions we realized through our discussions with the Japanese. We've had 2 different conferences this year where we've partnered with the Japanese Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the Japanese Oil, Gas and Metals Corporation, to talk about Asia and Asia LNG. The world is focused right now. The United States and some of the other LNG producers produce an incredible feat, like the equivalent of the Berlin airlift, but for natural gas. As the Russian gas has been embargoed from Europe, the U.S. producers along the Gulf Coast stepped up and delivered boatload after boatload of LNG to the European markets. They are actually ahead of their historical injection rate at this point, waiting for the winter months. But that has really turned the markets upside down on their head, and the Asians, which is, the focus is on Europe right now, but longer term, the holy grail is Asia. It's going to be 80% of all global growth, and it's not just Japan, it's not just South Korea, the more industrialized Western nations, but India, Pakistan, China. India is going to represent, they're looking at almost 500 increase in natural gas usage. And if we had a clear message from the Japanese, our friends with the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, because they're sitting right there in the larger global struggle with China, and they're telling us that if the United States is not supplying this gas to these Asian nations, that the Russians will do it. The Chinese will help them build it. So it's an important use of our own kind of what I'll dub soft power that we're going to discuss a little bit, and where the Rocky states kind of fit in that geopolitical puzzle. Here's a couple of slides from our engagement this year. This was from our summit in Grand Junction, Colorado. We had a video address from the U.S. ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, a huge supporter, and a direct presentation by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. It's kind of like their Department of Energy State Department, Department of Commerce, all rolled up into one. It sets their industrial policy, something we really don't necessarily have here, kind of under the Biden administration. But anyway, this is a great picture. These are of our representative tribes and our Japanese guests. And then we had another engagement in Washington, D.C. as well. This is Senator Lujan speaking at our below left, myself and Jason Sandel speaking with Representative Curtis from Utah, who received us graciously. And the Japanese got even very more explicit on kind of the need for the United States to engage with energy development and energy exports to the Asian nations. And this led up to the G7 summit that you all may have saw and read about in May. And I can tell you our organization was part of the dialogue that energy security and LNG needed to be a part of the communique. We were battling forces within the administration that did not want that. Ultimately, the Biden administration actually came out with pretty strong language supporting LNG development, LNG exports to the Asian nations under the guise or under the prospect of reduced emissions in Asian markets and energy security for our allies. And so that was an important victory for ours. Actually ran in a couple of political rags. And it was, I think, important in helping the Biden administration do the right thing politically and support our Asian allies. I think I've already went through those. So we're going to go over to our board session right now and talk a little bit more.
Andrew, thank you very much, and thank you all very much for having us at this conference. What a room. It's fantastic. My name is Jason Sandel. I'm a drilling and well servicing contractor from Farmington, New Mexico, and I was appointed by New Mexico's Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to represent the state of New Mexico on this board, and I also serve as chairman for Western States and Tribal Nations.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andrew. My name is Devin Pehrson. I'm the CEO of an entity called Ute Energy Exploration and Marketing, which is the energy development company of the Ute Indian tribe. It's our privilege to be part of this organization and to be nominated on behalf of the business committee to serve on this board. I serve as the treasurer for the organization, and the Ute tribe was a founding member of this organization, and it's been great to see it take shape, to find its legs, and to find a mission and a voice over the last few years. So thank you.
My name is Travis Taylor. I'm the Director of Operations for the Southern Indian Tribe for Red Willow. I'm here to represent the tribe and any of the sovereignty issues that we have. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you all.
And I'm Jeff Hartley. I represent the state of Utah. I'm appointed by the Office of Energy Development, and I'm a government relations contractor that worked in the state forever, since 2006 when I moved back from DC, and I'm pleased to represent all of you in your work here.
Thanks so much. And I'd like to recognize Bobby Ralston is in the audience as well. He represents the state of Wyoming on our board of directors. We had a few that couldn't show up, but we have a good panel here today. And I told Devin, in recognition of the Ute Indian tribe as it's kind of a founding member, I can tell you, we had a strong ground game we put together. This was in 2019 for the Jordan Cove permitting efforts. And we took delegations, including many probably in this audience, that Utah was very well represented, going up and speaking at the FERC hearings along the pipeline route on the importance of this project to Utah and to the western states. We had representatives from New Mexico, from Wyoming, from Colorado come, labor, tribal, government representatives. The Ute Indian tribe played an important role there and actually met with Pembina. And so the first question with you, Devin, is let's talk about that meeting with that you received, that we had with Pembina, and what were your kind of takeaways on the challenges toward infrastructure development in the western states, those that thin green line along Washington, Oregon, and California, and how, as we were starting our organization, how did that experience kind of influence your thoughts on our formation?
I'll try to behave on that one. I think we're all aware of the challenges, some of the regulatory environments to our west, which were clearly obvious and most transparent just this last winter with some of those gas pricing differentials. So it was always the tribe's position, and the reason they wanted to join this organization was to make sure that the unique voice of the tribe, the sovereign voice of the tribe, was heard and was told in a manner that was both, I don't want to say controlled, because that sounds a little domineering, but that was done in a way that was sensitive to the tribe's unique perspectives and their unique voice. And it's a marginalized voice. It's a misunderstood voice, and it's often a minimalized voice. So while the ground game was impressive, we didn't collaborate in that ground game. We kind of did it our own way, but the tribe supported that effort through a very meaningful way. We spent an entire week out there. We visited Pembina, and we felt we wanted to have assurances of their developmental philosophy, so that as we went and spoke with other tribes, the other tribal stakeholders that were in the Oregon area, that we were not misrepresenting anything, that we were telling a story that we felt was unique and genuine, and that we could also tell the story of how the tribe fit into that project, even though it was 1,500 miles away. And the chairman at the time, Chairman Duncan, put together a cohort, and we visited Pembina first there in the Portland area, and then we visited every single tribe along the coast that had expressed interest in this project, either as an opponent or as just a stakeholder. And then we went into the interior of the state, and we met with every one of them and told the story of what was important to the Ute Indian tribe, and that gas outlets for an energy tribe, they're not just isolated to reservation activity. They're regional, they're national, they're global, and all these things are connected. And they didn't understand that, and it was good to tell that story. Now, ultimately at the local level, I don't think it was to do with the tribes, but ultimately at the local level, that project was not permitted and unsuccessful. But it was at the federal level.
This is true. It's a good kind of segue, I guess, to talk to you, Travis, in the Southern Ute. Your perspective on joining Weston and the voice it represents for you.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that tribes have, and the largest bullet they have in their holster, so to speak, is their sovereignty. And we have gone through a lot of the permitting process and set in with the federal government to shape a lot of our sovereignty to be able to handle our natural gas and energy needs. So it was our responsibility to step up and speak on other tribes' behalf and to help educate other tribes on how to protect themselves and kind of what's coming down the pipeline, so to speak. So we were very excited to be able to be that voice for the tribes.
The Hickory Apache Nation is also a Weston member and not able to join us today. And as we have been kind of developing our platform and engaging stakeholders, the as I discussed earlier, the Ukraine Russian war has definitely turned the dynamics around, and the focus of our allies on securing, and I say our allies, our Asian allies, on securing, making sure that their energy needs not ignored or something that we've been supportive of. Jason, we've spent quite a bit of time this past year engaging Métis and Jogmec. Could you give a little bit of your perspective on our discussions with them and kind of what they're looking for in terms of energy, what the requirements are, what what they're willing to do to support us, and kind of what's the price of admission for our companies to be able to export there?
Well, thank you for the question, Andrew. I was struck when we went to Washington, D.C. as a group, met with some 30-odd Congress people or their staffs, and then we had a meeting down in the Capitol Visitor Center, and the minister or vice minister of METI came and addressed our group, and he was very clear. We will get natural gas from somewhere. We want it from the United States. But if we can't get it from you, we will get it from Russia. He was very, very clear. And when we are in a situation with Russian war against Ukraine and the atrocities that are going on in that part of the world, to me it's unfathomable that the United States wouldn't want to help our allies in Asian nations. So that circumstance really played into what our mission is as an organization, which is to find an outlet for Rocky Mountain stranded gas and to export that gas across the world in a manner that we can deliver to rural and tribal economic development, but then also deliver to global environmental goals that have been established. And to me, that's God's work. The work that you all and that we do is God's work, delivering energy across the globe in a responsible manner, such that we can shut down economic opportunity for dictators and provide jobs and food on the table for men and women who work day and night in the heat and the cold to just put food on their table. Many people that we've talked to who are exporters and who have the opportunity, whether it be Sempra or others who are in the business of building LNG export facilities, as well as the end user, they're very clear that the energy that we develop here in the Rocky Mountains is the cleanest energy in the world. And so responsibly developing our natural gas is something that the world is interested in and that they want, and it's highly desirable. And so our story is a great one. Your story is a great one. And it's something where we're sharing that story as an organization, and end users and exporters are buying what we're selling, is what it comes down to, Andrew.
So let me ask you this, in terms of the Japanese expectations. When you look at some of the projects, whether it's Mexico Pacific or it is Energía Costa Azul or yet to be announced projects on the west coast of Mexico. How do we stack up? We're competing against a major basin with just gas, really cheap gas, producers with really deep pockets. How do we carve out our own comparative advantage and set the table for Mexico Pacific Limited, for Energía Costa Azul, which by the way, an update on that project, phase one is underway. I think I reported out last year we were invited down to meet with Sempra and saw 2,500 workers in developing at various stages of developing that plant. It is going to go into operation in 2025, and they're utilizing existing infrastructure through El Paso to get part of their gas from the Permian and part from the San Juan. How do we make sure that second phase, phase two, which is 12 million tons per year, about 2 BCF a day, which would be about a 17% bump in cumulative Rockies production. How do we set the table? And I'll start with Jason, but other members feel free to chime in.
Well, it's been made clear to us, and what we advocate for is that the San Juan, the Uintah, the Pehrson, and beyond, we are natural gas producing basins. Yes, there is an oil side of the basin here in the Uintah. There's a little bit of an oil play in the San Juan, but we're not producing gas as associated gas, where we are tied to the ups and downs of the oil market. Producing gas is what we do. It is our profession, and so we're dependable. Where those exporters who need an enormous amount of gas can depend upon what we can deliver, not being swayed by a different market, a different commodity market. And that's been part of our selling point as we've been talking to these exporters that, come back home and deal with the folks that know what we're doing as it relates to producing this commodity.
Jeff Hartley, you and I talked a little bit last night about getting our sovereign sponsors, the state of Utah, the state of New Mexico, state of Wyoming, the sovereign tribal nations engaged with other Asian nations, specifically the Southeast Asian nations. Japan, Taiwan are well-known actors in the LNG space, but India, it has got the 5th largest economy in the world. They're working to reduce coal usage. You saw the quote there. They want to increase gas usage by 500%. Vietnam, Thailand are all in various stages of economic growth and development, looking at reducing coal emissions from their own coal-fired power generation. What can the states? What exists out there that we were talking about efforts that have been by previous administrations with New Mexico, with Wyoming, with Utah. What's out there, and what can we build on?
Yeah, that's a great part of the conversation, because the state of Utah, similar to other states, has had ongoing relationships, trade relationships with some of these countries. I've been on trade missions to Vietnam and Singapore, Japan, China, with the state of Utah, and we take official trade missions over, similar to other states, to engage in trade, imports and exports that would benefit companies here in Utah. That's something that the state takes on. And missing from a lot of those conversations in the past has been our large volume of natural resources that would be available. In particular, our gas supply that would be available to as those Asian countries try to move away from coal-fired power plants. If they're going to want to go to gas, we have an abundance of gas, and the question is, how do we get it to them? And for those of you who deal with permitting, which is probably half the room, if you can imagine, what we're talking about is a commodity scale pipeline or pipelines going away from the left coast or green coast of the United States down to Mexico, or maybe up through Canada, but getting to the Pacific Ocean so you can bypass the Panama Canal and save a lot of shipping time. But getting a pipeline permitted that would include all of these states that run from Alberta down through the Rockies, down through Arizona into Mexico, you're going to cross tribal land, you're going to cross BLM, you're going to cross Forest Service, state land, school trust land separate from state land, fee land. Imagine the permitting nightmare that represents, but that's what we're talking about, is that big of a project that will take a long time, cost a lot of money, but we're starting it because it's a conversation that needs to be had, because we have the supply, there's a market for it, we have to get the supply that we have to market, and that will take a lot of work. It'll take coordination between the tribes and the states, and among the states, we're talking about how do you finance sections of that pipeline, how does the state of Utah participate with Wyoming, New Mexico, Arizona, and the various tribes to help put together a financial stack that makes sense so that we can even have a conversation about how you would build such a pipeline. So the challenge is big, but the opportunity is huge and be beneficial to all of us.
I think that's a good segue into the next question, as we were kind of talking about last night about what should we brief this group on. There is we are a political organization, and we need to look at the political tea leaves, what's being passed out there, what this administration's objectives are. The Inflation Reduction Act, huge piece of legislation last year, called for a $9 billion investment, established tax credits for carbon capture, and called for $9 billion of investment in hydrogen infrastructure. The resulting effort was a number of states formed coalitions, including the state of Utah joined the Western Interstates Hydrogen Hub. And it's really many of the same founding members of Western States and Tribal Nations Natural Gas Initiative. You've got the Wyoming Energy Authority, the Utah Governor's Office of Energy Development, you have the New Mexico Energy and Minerals Department, as well as the Environment Department, are all kind of actors in this, hoping to realize and capture some of that administration funding. And my sense is there was about 50 coalitions, and they've gone through vetting processes, and they've cut folks. And my understanding is the WISH Coalition met with the Department of Energy and made this latest round. They had 20 different people that went, including some people in this room. Commissioner Todd, I know, is on that trip. Sorry, I keep on calling him Commissioner Todd. Greg Todd was on that trip, what are the opportunities? And I showed that graph in California. California is moving hard on hydrogen. What are some of the opportunities we can realize as our organization to ride some of the political wins on hydrogen? What are some of the opportunities we can realize to supply hydrogen, decarbonized ammonia to the Asian nations, but also to California, utilizing the existing apparatus that we put together. Go ahead, Jeff.
Can I start? Just a comment, just to give kudos to the various folks involved in those conversations. Andrew said that correctly that the Four Corners proposal made the cut. That's significant because it's blue hydrogen that they're talking about. It's not just green hydrogen. That's a big deal because it can be derived from natural gas. I thought when this started that anything but green hydrogen would be cut out of that process. So to make the cut is a big deal.
Good
because
point.
it's gas-based.
So look, there are 8 hard to decarbonize industries that are essential for our way of life: cement, steel, maritime, trucks, airlines, and they require a fuel. They're going to require a fuel. And our industry does more to solve those problems than any other. We have the research and the tech and really the intelligence and the want to be able to solve those very difficult questions. And so it makes me proud, again, to be part of this industry, to be coming up with solutions, and they are solutions that are sorely needed. We keep talking about California, and I just have to hit this point home. California changed their own mind within the past 12 months and said,
Yep.
oh, well, we do want natural gas. And we do want hydrogen, regardless of what color. We want fuel because we know that the cost, the expense to our residents is so great that people are going to go without and not be able to afford putting food on their table unless they welcome an industry. And I'm proud, no different than we have over the past 50 years or the past century, to deliver that fuel, that energy for the left coast. Now, let's also be clear. as we're talking about exports, whether it be hydrogen exports or nat gas exports or whatever it may be, it also is a travesty that we're talking about USA fuel being sent to Canada or to Mexico to be exported to clean up the globe and provide energy to afford the opportunity for energy transition. And those states that are along the West Coast that are part of the United States don't want to be part of it. And I think that that's an absolute travesty. But our fuel is going to lead the energy transition across the globe, and that's something that we should be damn proud of.
I'm going to revisit your prior question, Andrew, and then maybe lean into your subsequent question. I think what it's going to require is not only a collaborative effort from the Western United States and organizations like the one we represent, but also an appetite of some form or fashion for the recipient nation to help facilitate some of that and reach in and empower their own energy security as well. And so as we explore opportunities with the Asiatic nations to help solve a problem of their own energy security, we also need to be gauging their appetite for participation in their security. As you've pointed out, there haven't been a lot of wins on the carbon fuels front, right? But one thing that we know from that G7 summit win was on the diplomacy side, maybe there is a little ground to be given. Maybe there are some wins to be had on the global security, environmental and socioeconomic security front that compelling stories can still be told for carbon-based fuels. And when it comes to hydrogen, we all know, we've seen the amount of money that the federal government has thrown at this thing, and they seem, hell-bent on making that successful. And I don't know that any of us really know what that looks like or how that takes shape. The folks in Japan have said we're going full blast on decarbonized ammonia, but other countries have different initiatives, and so we don't know where the dust is going to settle on all that stuff. But what we do know is a lot of the infrastructure that's related to natural gas can be common infrastructure with future energy solutions and sources.
Well said. I think that as we are kind of tying up this conversation, because I do want to allow some time for questions, the focus, as I'm hearing it, as we discussed, we had a board meeting last night, is going to be to pull those countries in, not just our specific allies of Japan and South Korea, which are important military allies, but this is, I don't want to kind of put it this way, like in Cold War terms, but this is the evolving competition for the hearts and minds for the democratic nations to lead, and energy, and making sure our allies and trading partners are energy secure with clean fuels. There's no, as you said, Jason, there is no greater calling to make that happen for certainly for where we are right now, and then for our kids, our future generations. So, with that, we've got 8 minutes. It always goes much more quickly than you think. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hey, Andrew, does the pipeline infrastructure exist to get the gas out of the Rockies to the LNG plant?
No. For the current plant at Energía Costa Azul, specifically on that one, phase one, yes, that does exist. When we're talking about the base loads that they're expecting that they're going to need, there would need to be new infrastructure built.
Going where? Which facility?
Well, it depends. We're using Mexico Pacific and Energía Costa Azul as examples. Energía Costa Azul is south of San Diego. Mexico Pacific is on the west coast of Sonora, Mexico.
Andrew, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please.
So the plans for ECA at phase 2 FID, or phase 2, will be 2 to 2.5 B a day to export. There is infrastructure that is in the ground today where we can get gas to that facility
But in order to accomplish the goal of 2 B a day, we're going to have to upsize the pipe that's in the ground. It is really what it comes down to. And so permitting is a major conversation for us about how it is that we can update our infrastructure here in the United States to be able to make that a reality.
How much pipes? How many miles?
How far is it to San Diego?
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of the discussion is, you know, if we're moving on hydrogen, if California wants hydrogen, how do we start to develop the technical economic baseline for hydrogen compliant natural gas infrastructure? So those are questions we're going to be tackling. We don't have answers right now. But yes, to answer your question, new infrastructure will need to be built. The infrastructure right now that exists is built in 1939, regardless. So it is an old piece of infrastructure. Any other questions?
Andrew, that actually might be an opportunity to point out an obvious thing. If you can imagine that permitting process and the challenges of getting those permits in place, that wouldn't be possible but for our energy-producing tribal partners. We wouldn't be having the conversation in this current administration but for the energy-producing tribal partners. So they're critical to these conversations. We wouldn't be able to have these conversations without them. It'd just be a hard no, and that's huge and very much appreciated.
Thank you. Good point. Any other questions? Anyone want to round out summary of words?
No, I think we're the last thing that stands in between them and lunch. And I'm well aware of the risks associated with that, so I yield my time, Andrew.
We'll give you the last 4 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.